listening to The Collective Journey. What's good, y'all? Did you guys miss me? I missed y'all. All right, for today's episode, I've got Abe on the mic. Abe, pull us in, tell us what's going on, introduce yourself, say what's up.
Hey, what's up? I'm Abe. That's it. We'll get to know myself more in the later episodes, but tell us about what happened this summer, the hiatus, where you been?
The hiatus?
Yeah.
Where did Courtneys Network go?
Yeah.
So if you guys have been following me since the beginning, I'm sure you're wondering, all right, Courtneys Network went to the Collective Journey podcast. What is happening? What went down? I was so excited to do this project, right? Like to put this podcast out. I felt so passionate about it. You and I talked about it for so long, and I put in a lot of time, effort, and thoughts, right? And then me and you hit this point where you're like, you need to just put it out. And I was nervous, right? As most people are when they're like starting a project. I realized also throughout this process I'm a perfectionist, but we'll talk about that later. But I put it out, and then summer hit, and with summer hitting, all these things started happening that were far worse than COVID hitting. And I felt so deeply affected by all the events that were taking place over the summer. And in the midst of that, we're in quarantine because of COVID, and all I did this summer was work. So when I wasn't working on the podcast, I was, working full time, right? And then I'm also in the Air Force Reserves, for those who don't know. And so I have to make a lot of phone calls back to the States. So I feel like all I did this summer was work. I don't even know that I really took any days off. And as the summer was developing, I just hit a brick wall with the podcast. Like, everything that I was wanting to do wasn't coming together because of quarantine rules, and we were having to abide by them. And then phone interviews were not as I assumed them to be. And what's funny is that most people typically do blogs and then they shift into a podcast. I don't really think there's a lot of people out there that just throw out a podcast out of thin air.
I think we were talking to, you were like, I think I want to do a blog. So I guess we're working backwards now. So
I feel like I do everything backwards. I just do it in my own way. So there were all these challenges, right? Like, I thought the audio challenge was enough in itself, like us figuring out how to use GarageBand and how to. Okay, I mean you, right?
I'm just kidding.
So I thought that was enough in itself, and then like trying to be creative. That was a whole other level. And then relearning the interview process in not the way that I thought it would be, right? And I'm sure most podcasters who are established were all hit the same type of brick wall when COVID hit, because you went from, hey, come to my studio, let's do an interview, to, oh shit, like now we've got to do Zoom call interviews and I can't connect like I'm used to. So that turned into, okay, let's just do a couple episodes where I'm just talking on the mic by myself, like solo episodes. And then that turned into like, I would call my version of like an Xanga diary. Do you remember those? Did you ever have one?
Absolutely. I did all like the coding and had all the cool pictures.
Wait, you did?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I was going to say I never had an Xanga diary, but if I did, I imagine it would have been a little cringeworthy.
Yeah, I don't want to go.
You don't want to revisit? I would.
I'm pretty sure it's still floating out there.
I would love to get my hands on that.
We'll leave that deep in the internet.
Leave it behind. So yeah, like it took this like Xanga diary turn to where like I was just like giving people a play-by-play on what was going on and what we were experiencing. And I decided to just stop. I was like, you know what? We're going to stop here with the podcast. Like, I just pulled the plug. And I'm glad I did that, because I wasn't going in the direction I wanted to, and I just needed time to stop and think of, all right, what do I do? How do I problem solve this? I need to solve this problem. And so I took some time off. I took a hiatus And then that freed up my schedule to spend time with you guys.
Yep, and we definitely did have a lot of free time. I mean, you were teleworking, I was teleworking.
Mm-hmm.
We were on specific COVID restrictions here out in Germany. Oh, so we're in Germany, just for our listeners. We're near the French border, so we have like a specific German law and U.S. law things that we have to abide by, and it's a whole thing. I'm sure
it's a whole process. We'll get into it in some later episodes. But yeah, so we took some time and we did a couple trips here and there, which that was kind of awkward in trying to figure out how do we navigate the listing on where we can travel, like what's a red zone, what's not a red zone. And then I took on some other projects. So I didn't want the podcast to die, right? I was like, I gave birth to this podcast. Like, I'm taking a hiatus, but I'm going to come back. And how do I keep things afloat? So I stuck with what I knew, and I teamed up with Nike app, and I started a run challenge, and I just threw out a filler. I had no idea where it was going to go. I was like, this is going to be a flop. And I just kind of put out a video on my Instagram. I was like, hey, like, I'm doing this run challenge. Who wants to join? Lo and behold, I ended up having people from all over the States, people over here that were joining this run challenge and competing with each other and talking trash to each other through the internet.
I know I was one of the trash talkers, and
you were the worst one.
Competitor. I'm sorry, it just brings out my
competitive side.
Yeah. So, but it was to me, it was really cool things, because just like you're saying, we had people out in Philly, we had people out in California, LA, Texas, Germany. Everybody was trying to get into this 50-mile run challenge. I think it started off as...
I said 50 miles in 1 month. And I left it open to anybody and everybody. I was like, look, there's no stipulations. Like, this isn't like a gung-ho thing, There were people that were joining that were active duty, and they were like, hey, like, I need to get my shit together for my physical fitness test. And which, if you're not in the military and you're like, what's a physical fitness test? Like, in the military, we have to take a physical fitness test annually or biannually if you score high enough.
Yeah. Or you get the boot.
You get the boot.
That's it.
You don't want to lose your job. So we got to maintain our fitness at all times. And then I had people that, it's their job to be combat ready in the military, and they were joining. And then I had...
Yeah, and that was crazy to me, just because we had homemakers to regular military to special forces type mission people, military.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, everybody's competitive.
Like, all walks of life.
Yeah,
everybody was getting in there.
Yeah, and it really wasn't about... Yeah, it was, I'm sure there's people that run faster or are fitter, but it was really just down to the dedication. Like, were you putting in your miles? If you could run 6 miles in one sitting, but if you took 2 days off, hey, you're back. You're not competitive anymore. And I thought that was pretty unique to this. Yeah. Yeah. What place were you in?
Don't want to talk about it. I was juggling a lot of things, as I always do.
You are. So you wear many hats, right? You active reserve, veteran, federal employee for the Department of Defense. And tell us a little about the whole Department of Defense, what you do. You hold an executive position, but how long have you been in the government? What?
So I've actually, you guys, so if you're listening and you don't know already, you're a new listener, I have been working for the federal government for 10 years. So I've spent part of my time active duty Air Force, and then I've spent the other part of my time just working for the Department of Defense as a government employee. I've actually had the opportunity over the last 5 years to work for 2 incredible agencies that I'm really passionate about. What I did when I was there, what our mission was behind what we do. And I really love what I do on the 9 to 5 side. I feel super passionate about it. And I would have never guessed that this is where I would be at today, that I'd be employed through the government and in and out of uniform. You know, I don't think many people think like this is what I'm going to grow up to do and be.
Yeah, I think 1% of the world's population joins
the military,
right? And then of that 1%, I mean, it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. So you're Latina, you're a working mom, you're a veteran. You do it all. But tell us about the name. A collective journey.
How did I get there? How did I get to that part? So the thing is that with Courtneys Network, I felt so passionate about what I wanted the platform to be, but the name, I was not sold on the name. And I mean, I remember like going back and forth with you. Like you were like, you got to come up with something good, something that it just, describes what you want this platform to be. And I was like, come up with the name. Like, are you kidding me? Okay, so if you don't know me in real life, it took me and Abe, we have a son, and he's about to be 2. It took us pretty much 9 months to come up with his name. And we were entering the hospital, and I was still unsure that if it was a boy, because we didn't know what we were having. I made everybody wait to find out until I gave birth. I wasn't really sold on his name. I was like, I feel like we're going to get to the hospital. I'm going to change my mind, and I don't know if I'm going to get Abe to be on board or not. We went through so many names. So for me to come up with a name for this project, for this podcast, right? I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, do you know how hard it was to come up with Levi's name?
I'm like, we don't even know if we're going to keep that. No, I'm just kidding.
So like nobody really talks about that, like how difficult it is to come up with a name for something. So Courtney's Network, to me, that was the best that I could come up with.
Well, and a lot of times, you just gotta go. You just gotta pick the name and go. Sometimes it's not even that important.
So you say Gary Vee said, and I'm like, that's not true.
Gary
V. Yeah, V. Sorry, I screwed that up. But I'm like, that's not even true, because here we are. I came up with the name for our podcast. I put it out there, and now we're having to change it and pivot. I'm like, we're changing it. We're going to talk about it briefly, and then we're going to walk the other way and not look back. But the reason why I came up with Courtney's Network was because this was, and this still is, for my people, by my people. And I consider your network so important. Like, it's such an important thing to have in life.
I feel like that's like FUBU.
All right.
But anyway, now it's the collective journey.
There you go.
Stares off into the distance.
So the thing with that is that life is a journey, and it's not a straight and narrow path that we fantasize it to be, right? Like, everybody tells you that you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do it in chronological order because that's what society tells you. But so often that is not the way that life turns out to be. It's a series of ups and downs, right turns and wrong turns. And my journey, in my opinion, has been very colorful. And, I would say that I would take it to the fact that I joined the military when I was 18, and I packed a bag and I never went back home. And I've been all over the world, and I have met so many people that have expanded my paradigm. And there's something about when you meet other people and you hear their life stories, right? Like, you hear somebody's life story and it changes you. You connect with this stranger now. Like, you're connected to them. Like, you learned something from them. And if you guys exchange stories, then both of you have taken something from each other. And now you're going on to the next part of your journey, and you're going to take a piece of them with you.
There it is. The journey. The
right?
Collective journey.
So that's over the hiatus. Like, that's where once I created this podcast and this platform, that's the direction that I saw the name going into, the collective journey.
And I feel like for you, you're such a perfectionist too, to bend and be like, all right, I'm not very pleased. I don't like it. I don't love it. And for you to keep going forward just for the sake of this vehicle and to get it out to your listeners, I think that was awesome. And I think you embody the actual mission, your mission statement.
Right.
So you have a lot of strengths. You have a lot of benefits. You're the career woman. You're our family nutritionist. You're my sustainable product advisor, as I like to call you. You're always trying to get me to buy glass straws and whatnot.
We got to care about the environment.
Yeah, but tell us what you got lined up for the later episodes in the podcast, if you even have that figured out, which I'm sure you do. But
of course, Of course, I am a planner and an organizer and all the things. So this isn't going to be just a platform for people's stories. Are you ready for this? I'm pushing for a movement. All right, stay with me. I'm pushing for a more inclusive society with diversity. We need more diversity. And if there's anything that we learned this year, it's just that we need to be more inclusive with people around us. Not the person that lives down the street, but the person that lives in the next state over, or the person that lives across the world from you. Like, we need to be more inclusive with people. We need to be diverse, and we need to be a more empathetic society, because we're not getting anywhere right now.
Yeah, and it's important you highlight that, even from the next state over, because from one state to the other, you could have just a completely different people and a completely different way of life. I mean, you've learned that living in different places throughout the U.S. I have too. Mm-hmm. And I could tell you California isn't like Texas and Texas isn't like California. But we're all bonded by that same thing, right? We're quote unquote Americans, right?
Respect.
Or we're just humans. Mm-hmm. So, I'm glad to be on the journey.
Right?
Yeah.
So, because it's not just my journey, like I'm sitting here like talking about me and my journey, but I think of our journey where we're at right now, right? I think of us, we're not a normal couple who lives in Topeka, Kansas, and we go to our 9-to-5 jobs, and we take Levi to soccer practice every Saturday, and we go to church on Sundays, and we've lived in the same town our whole life. We are a dual military family living overseas. And I want to share more of that chapter of our life and how we got here, like our separate journeys and then our journey now together and where we're going. And I also, the part of what drives me to want to continue to do this and not just be like, okay, I put out a podcast, I epically failed, and let's turn away and like never look back, is that I think of me and you always have these conversations where we are both those kids that made it out. Like, we made it out. We beat the statistics that we both were challenging on ourselves, right? Like, I always say, like, we're like lotus leaves or lotus flowers. Like, we, just bloomed out of mud, and here we are. And I think of the kids that live in our hometowns, and I'm like, who's telling them, like, you can do this? You can do something you've never seen before. You can break those generational curses. Yeah,
and you don't even have to leave your hometown and even do that. No. So
that's just our story. Like, that's just our journey, but that doesn't have to be yours. No. And I think of the people that are like us, right? They're like, yeah, I made it out too. And I look at us and I'm like, we're trailblazers. We're pioneers. We are creating this blueprint as we go along. We had nobody in front of us who helped us navigate this. Like, we just made it, and we're like, all right, like, we're making it up as we go along. We don't know what we're doing. We're just hoping every decision that we make is the right decision and leads us to where we want to be. Like, we want to be successful, but there's something in the professional world, right? Like, I'm not in uniform full time, you are, but we both connect on the level that we're like, we're trying to make it, but we're also not trying to be do I dare say, a kiss ass along the way, right? Like, we have a lot of integrity and pride, and we just want to make it. But like, we're not trying to kiss anybody's ass along the way, but we want to network and we want to learn things, and we want to expand our paradigm when it comes to like the professional world. And we want to know the things that we need to know in order to progress. So there's all those conversations that we want to have. And I feel like there's all those people out there that are like, yeah, like, I want to have those conversations too, but I don't have time to have them at work. Or I go to networking events and it's really stuffy. It's really awkward. Everybody's uptight. Everybody's like, here's my LinkedIn card. And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to have an adult beverage after hours, let my hair down, and let's crack some jokes. Let's talk about some real shit that we need to do in order to progress and make it. And then I think of all the people that have helped me get to where I'm at, and I am constantly leaning in on them, like stalking them, never letting them out of my contact, my Rolodex, right? My contact list, because I'm like, I need you, because you are the person who helped me get where I'm at today, and you're going to continue to help me progress. And we learn from those people, and I want to pull those people on. I want them to share their secrets with us. And then I think about
each one teach one,
right? Teamwork makes the dream work. All right.
All right. No, enough cheesy sayings.
So I think of that, and that's also where I want to take the podcast. So what about you? Because I'm just sitting here like blabbing on about me. Because you're more than
all those things and more. No,
right? You're a lot of things, and there's a reason. Hold on, but there's a reason why. Like, I'm not the type of person where I wouldn't have just pulled you on here to just pull you on here. Like, your beliefs and your values align with mine, and you feel so passionately in the way that I do. And I know that you have so much goodness and so much knowledge you can drop on this podcast with me. That's why I want you to come in and co-host every now and again. So the floor is yours. Tell us what you have in store for us.
I mean, you know me, and for our listeners out there, I guess that don't know, I'm first generation. I'm straight out of Stockton, which is not the best of place. But along the way, along my journey, I met a lot of people, and I kind of want to be, at least for this podcast, the conduit to bring those people on. I want to bring some of my mentors on, the people I pull from, my knowledge, that I bounce ideas back and forth. I definitely have a couple people that come to mind where I'm like, man, you're a great speaker, and you got that leadership trait. You have that leadership thing figured out, And I think a lot of people could benefit from that. And if not, learn to be just a great follower. And that in turn makes a great leader. So that's the mission. That's the vision.
I'm feeling it. I'm getting chills.
Yeah, we'll see. I have some financial knowledge to pretty much drop also. I'm heavy into the stocks. I'm heavy into my portfolio. Not all the time, is good. But I definitely have this knowledge that I want to share and bring to our listeners, basic budgeting knowledge, basic financial tools that you could use, and then just ways to grow your money. But yeah, that's what I got.
Because you have a lot of things going for you. You're first generation. You are a veteran yourself. But you're active duty. I mean, you can classify as a veteran, but you're active duty military. So like, we think about all our people, right? Like active duty military, like what do they need to be hearing, right? Like everybody, when we're in uniform, like we're all the same, right? Like we all have to abide by the same rules and regulations. We all have to say, yes, sir, no, sir, staff sergeant, master sergeant. But we want to have those real conversations, right? And you're not having these kind of conversations when you're at a party or, when you're at a morale event. Like that's what we're trying to create here for our people, by our people.
Back to the FUBU.
Back to the FUBU. But, so, all I'm saying is, are y'all in or are y'all out? All right, guys. Thanks for listening.